Hello, I just wanted to put down a note about something which feels very important to me. Um, um, I've been having lots of talks recently with a friend of mine about developmental processes and developmental processes in terms of the elements and things like that. And lots of interesting things that come out of that. You know, um, like the the in the development of the personality and parts of our identity, how certain certain phases and processes are characterized both by a kind of emptiness, a sort of a fabrication, if you like, but also extraordinary creativity, and the two actually come together in many ways. And now it doesn't begin or end there, but it's a very very interesting thing. This thing. Uh, you could say the link between art and artifice in a way, and how that relates to our development of personality and identity and things like this. I think it is interesting. Um, uh, but one thing I wanted to touch upon, uh, and that is that, I mean, in some forms of diabolism, we view our God as basically being the source of a certain kind of consciousness. And in many ways, as being responsible for the arising of individual consciousness and of um, a certain kind of being. The arising of basically the arising of separate being, you could say. Um, I think it becomes quite tantric at a certain point. Um, but we think of our God as being the one who gifted us this uh, extraordinary thing, which leads to the arising of separate being, which is how we live and exist. And this is where our creativity comes from. It's where all of our inspiration comes from. In many ways, the same kind of impulse, I believe, really. Now, I very much feel that there is implicit in us a sort of like a deep insecurity, uh, because our sense of being is characterized by an awareness of an emptiness underneath the sense of being. And I think that is because our our sense of being in this way was gifted to us. That's how I feel. That's what I feel as a diabolist. Um, and so our actual sense of separate being is something um, that happened to us, in quotes, at a certain point. Um, and of course, uh, because this leads to the arising of our sense of being, there's on the one hand a sense that it's all me, wow, because it's the arising of being, it's the arising of it, yeah. And on the other hand, there is this sense of existential emptiness, because there's an awareness that our being was, what's the word, kind of induced in us, brought into us. Yes, that would be one way of seeing it. Now, uh, I just think this is a really interesting perspective for us. Yeah, um, and I think that we it's one that we have to like come to terms with. I think, yeah, and see where does that lead us. What does it mean for us in a way? Uh, and well, what you might loosely term the right hand path sort of dispensation tends to take the view that this this existential malaise, if you like, this emptiness is um, is uh, is solved or resolved in the oneness of being, yeah, and us all being all part of one great thing. Now, of course, we are all part of one great thing, but that's not what the arising of the sense of being is like. That's not what artistic creativity is like. It's not what inspiration is like. It's not what it's not what the experience of being as it is like for us. Yeah. Um, and there is a sense that to arrive at that, one must, in a sense, shed an awful lot, which is very much part of us. Now, whatever you think of that, yeah, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, yeah. But there is another way, and that is to understand that we may have this sense of emptiness and a kind of existential horror because it brings us very close to the sense of non-existence, which we can't even imagine. Yeah, it brings us close to that, this sense of existential angst and the sense of the emptiness which comes underneath things. But the thing is to understand, though, that the very fact of having come into existence is a kind of victory and a gift, and it is one which is guaranteed and which is, yes, it's kind of guaranteed and vindicated for us as Diabolists by the one who imparted that to us. And so there we see, without utterly abrogating separateness, without utterly trying to negate separateness and individual being and individuality, what we have is an understanding rooted in a relationship with the God who for us imparted to us our sense of actual being. But the sense of emptiness is an interesting one, because as I said at the beginning, there's this link between art and artifice, and the fact that in our personalities we are all false in some respect, and yet that falseness becomes what we actually are in a sense, yeah. If it follows a good enough course, yeah, and if it doesn't follow a good enough course, then that's something which will incur prices and results which mean that it has to be corrected or what have you. But there is that sense that we have to come to terms with our emptiness, because it's also, in a sense, the womb of creativity. It's also our creativity. It's our deeper nature in many ways. And in some ways, it's what we most deeply are. It is, in a sense, our soul. And so, I think those are things which, through our lives and through our experiences and through our deepest experiences, I think we do grapple with in various ways throughout our lives. And for us for me as a Diabolist, the relationship to the unknown, to the invisible, this is some of the most important stuff, really. The relationship to the spirits, and the relationship to our gods. So that's where I put that anyway, and I hope that was of interest.